Namaste. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. V.Premalatha, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Performing Arts, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. This is a module on History of Indian Music in the paper Indian Aesthetics and Fine Arts for the subject of Indian culture. In this module, we are going to have a look at the history of Indian music. Let us trace the history of the music from the prehistoric period to the modern times. We will be looking into various landmarks in the history and development of music. We will also be outlining the various oral music traditions, and at the end try to learn the sources that have been very helpful in knowing the history of music. Fine. First, let us put how to learn about the history. We will have to put them and categorize them into periods. The distinct periods in the development of music history as we see: the ancient period, the medieval period and the modern period. The ancient period includes the historical developments from 10,000 BC to 4th century AD. The medieval period, today we are looking from 4th century to the 7th century, and the modern period we will be looking into the historical development from 17th century onwards. Fine. Now, the ancient period, literally there was no textual tradition in that prehistoric period. So, only the archaeological finds, we find some evidences of musical instruments like flute, harp, and there are also some references to dancing and other singing, acting, other things, all from the archaeological sources, and we don't have any such written or evidences from the literary sources. And next, if we go into the history of the textual tradition, we take Tamil textual tradition and the Sanskrit textual tradition. The Tamil textual tradition, we come to know about a lot of information from few Tamil works like the Tolkapiyam, Ettuttogai, Pattupattu, the Panchamarabu, Silapathigaram and works like them, and they all contain several descriptions of music and dance and lot of references to instruments like harp, yawl and other things. And about the Samskrta textual tradition, we have several references from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas and such other things. The earliest of the sources we have the Samaveda. Samaveda was both chanted and sung, the Samagana, and there were some musical notes like the Archika, Gatika, Samika and Swarantara. Then some few others were also added to these, and they were called Krishta, Pratama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturtha, Mandra, Atiswarya, and these were later called as the Savaras. Later came the seven Swaras. There are also several references to musical instruments in the Vedas. And as we all know, the Samagana was sung and it has come down through a oral tradition even to today, and it's a well defined tune, and they all were set to specific rules. And it is also said the hand was used to denote the various swaras and other things of a sama scale. And now when we come into the references to music, the musical instruments, the ragas and other things in the sacred and secular literature, Ramayana and Mahabharata and many Puranas contain several references to many music concepts like the swaras, ragas, instruments, the playing, the performances. Lavakusha were the earliest performers of the Ramayana period. They enacted the entire Ramayana, and plenty of musical references are also available from the Buddhist and Jain literature. Apart from this, by the 2nd century, we also have a typical musicological and a dramaturgical text called the Natya Shastra. It's a great and a monumental work by Bharata, which consists of a lot many things regarding Natya, and a parallel work is Dattilam. These two belong to the Gandharva music, and they give lot of references on the music concepts because music was a limb of Natya. And the earlier musicological works dates back to the 1st to the 4th century. we have again the Natya Shastra of Bharata, the Dattilam of the Dattila Muni. And these are the primary musicological works which are very, very important to know the music of that period. They are scientific works written in Samskrta. Bharata's Natya Shastra also consists of an commentary which was written at least 1000 years later by Abhinava Gupta called the Abhinava Bharati. And these two works are the main sources which speak of the Gandharva music. The Natya in Bharata was a composite art. So, it is an art form that uses dance, music and drumming. And here music is not only a component for drama, but it was also used in a space called Purvaranga. The Purvaranga are the preliminaries that were conducted before the starting of a drama. There is a separate chapter devoted to this in Natya Shastra, where the role of music has been explained in detail. Coming to the Samskrta textual tradition of the medieval period, we see works dealing with the Dēśī Sangita. The prominent work being the Brihad Dēśī of Matanga Muni. There were some other texts also written following this, the Manasolasa of Someshwara. These all dealt with Sangita. This consisted of Gita, Vadya and Nritta. Nritta did not involve the emotional expression only, but it was only body movements. But in Sangita, Gana or Gita was prominent. Thus, you can see a change from the Natya of the Natya Shastra period and the Dēśī Sangita period. The earlier system, it was the Marga Sangita, and the later period, it was called as the Dēśī Sangita. The Sangita Ratnakara of Sharangadeva is a first complete and exhaustive work on this subject of Dēśī Sangita. After the Sangita Ratnakara, from 15th, 16th century, we have a number of works written on music. And this now, there is a shift, like Natya was different and then it became Dēśī Sangita. Here onwards, we find text prefixed with Sangita. Here Sangita became a separate art form and dancing became another separate art form, like Nritta, Nartana, Nritya, they all were taught about and they were talked about in a separate chapter in most of these works, right from Sangita Ratnakara. There were many works written from this period, like the Sangita Raj of Kumbharana and the Sangita Parijata of Ahobala, Swaramela Kalanidhi of Ramamatya, Caturdandi Prakashika of Venkatamaki and so on. And in this period, we find that there are so many musicological works which speaks of ragas, mela, swara, gamaka, badana beda, tala, lot many things we get differences and differences in the concepts and the deviations, everything we come to know the history and development of musical concepts from these works. There is now, after looking into the various historical development of music through the written tradition, now let us have a look about it from the oral tradition. See, parallelly we should understand that Lakshya follows first, it goes, and the Lakshana follows Lakshya. So, there should have been some kind of a practical tradition, the practicing tradition going on, which is documented in the form of musicological works. When coming to the oral traditions, from 15th century onwards, we see that there was a difference, and a South Indian system and a North Indian system, the kind of differentiation seems to have emerged by the 13th to 15th century. With respect to the southern system, we come to know about a few vocal traditions, oral traditions, like this is also because of the Bhakti movement and the development of other religious and saint seers and saints who were also monumental in bringing about the oral tradition alive. Like we have the Tirumurai, Divya Prabandham, Tiruppugal and other traditions from this Tamil Nadu, the Dēśī theatre and the Caturdandi tradition from one side, and we have the Sõpāna Sangitam and the Kathakali music from the Malabar side. We have the Virasaiva tradition of the Virasaiva-s, the Vacana tradition, that is from the Karnataka side. Also simultaneously we have the Kirtana tradition from the Haridāsas of Karnataka. These all emerged, and they were some practical music going on. They emerged and some sort of musical activities had taken place. We will just have a look at each one of them in brief. The Tirumurai is a compendium of a Saivite literature consisting of 12 volumes. The first 7 are called Thevaram, and they were composed in the 7th and 8th centuries by the 3 saints called Tirunavukkarasar, also called as Appar, Tirunāna Sambandar and Sundarar. The Periya Puranam, composed by Sekilar a century later, was added as the 12th book. This tradition of religious singing was for many centuries seen, during which the singers were called as Oduvars. They were appointed and they were to sing the Tirumurai or the Thevarams in the Shaivite temples. Today also we see that this tradition is being upheld in many of the Shiva temples. With respect to the Divya Prabandham, we see that there were at least 4,000 plus verses composed before 8th centuries, and they were all in praise of Lord Vishnu. They were called as the Nalayira Divya Prabandham. They were sung by the 12 Alvars on Lord Vishnu and many of his forms. To the present form, it was compiled by Nadamuni in 9th to 10th centuries. These were sung on the gods, and the places were known as the Divya Deshas. The Tiruvaimoli were also 1,000 plus verses, which were also considered important, and they were composed by Nammalvar. Next is the Sõpāna Sangitam and Kathakali music. Sõpāna Sangitam existed in Kerala in the 9th century. It is actually a kind of musical, a mix of Vedic, tribal and folk of that region, usually sung in front of the temples. It is actually sung along the steps when you lead to the Sanctum Sanctorum of Kerala temples. It's a tradition followed even today, and there is a special set of people who sing the songs, who render the music on the instruments in a specific and a prescribed manner. It is characterized, this Sõpāna music is characterized by the use of akaram, the A sound, to the most, and some typical instruments like the edakka, chengla are used for rendering this form of music. The emergence of the modern day Kathakali dance in the 17th century, this now has given rise to the Kathakali music. And this Sõpāna music is mostly in a mixture of Malayalam and Sanskrit. Usually they call it as the Manipravala, where a mixture of 2 languages or more are incorporated in the rendering. Now about the Vacana tradition of the Virasaiva-s. It was during the 12th, 13th century that a sect of Virasaiva Saints of Karnataka, they came into being. Some of them are like Akka Mahadevi, Allamma Prabhu, and they also played instruments. They were good at singing. They composed poems and vachanas. And these vachanas were sung to a specific raga and a thala. They were all again divine pieces which were on Shiva, and people used to follow these and repeat these, and these came into a kind of oral tradition, came into existence. Next is the Haridāsa's contribution. Haridāsas were again the saints from Karnataka. They emerged from Narahari Tirtha. He was a direct disciple of Madhvacharya. And they composed Kirtanas, Devarnamas, and they were all simple songs in Kannada on Lord Vishnu and his other forms. The main prominent Haridāsas were Sripadaraya, Vyasatirtha, Purandaradasa, Kanakadasa, and later Vijayadasa, Venkatadasa, Jagannathadasa, and many others. They all have sung plenty of songs called as Devarnama, Dasara Padagalu on Krishna, Vishnu and others, and they were very simple and filled with a lot of emotion and devotion to Lord. They were set in a simple language which was very much commonly and very easily practicable for a layman. The Dēśī theatre and the Caturdandi tradition is a parallel thing which came later, and this involved the singing of the Prabandhas. There were two stages in its development. One is the singing of the Shuddha Sudas and other Prabandhas. The other is the singing of the Salaga Suda Prabandhas. The Caturdandi tradition was a departure from the earlier Dēśī tradition. The Caturdandi tradition involved the singing of the Alapa, Taya, Gita and then the Prabandhas. This Caturdandi tradition probably had emerged and it had been in its peak in the Tanjore area also, and one called Gopal Nayak of the 13th century seems to have been the expert in the performance of this Caturdandi, and later it has come down to Tanjore, and where it has gained its importance, and we have several references to these in the Sangita Sudha and Caturdandi Prakashika. The tradition of classical South Indian music, which is now rich in the southern part of India, is a very rich tradition, and this evokes the cultural status of India to the world. Prominent seats of music were Tanjore, Mysore, Thiruvananthapuram and also Vijayanagaram at one point of time. Several patrons like the royal zamindars, the kings and others were highly monumental, and they were helpful in bringing up classical art music. Musicians were appointed as Asthana Vidwans, and they flourished like anything. And we see like compositions like the Swarajati, Varna, Tillana, Ragamalika emerged during this period. From 17th century onwards, the form Kriti took its full form, and we see that the main started and the pathfinder was Margadarshi Seshayangar, followed by Shyama Shastri, Muthuswami Dikshita and Tyagaraja, who refined the musical form Kriti. And after these three main people, called as the Trinity of South Indian classical music, Karnataka music, we find that many composers following them have composed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs, and these are the Kritis which now keep up the tradition of South Indian classical music. Parallel to this was the tradition of the classical music of North, where Amir Khusru, he composed in Persian, Arabic, Turkish and Brajbhasha languages. Forms like Drupad, Khyal developed there, and he was the one who systematized the Hindustani music and introduced several ragas and instruments. Compositions by saints like Kabir, Surdas, Tulsidas, Jayadeva, Mirabai and Guru Nanak also came to be popularly followed. And then later we find that the diversity in styles known as the Gharanas, like the Patiala Gharana, Lucknow Gharana, Agra Gharana, they all emerged. Now, the next part of our in this module, we will be looking into the different sources that are highly helpful for us to know the history of Indian music. Roughly, we can classify them into the musicological works. Next is the references to music from other non-music works. Third will be the archaeological or the historical records. Regarding the musicological works, we came to know about a few works mentioned in our earlier in this module: Natya Shastra of Bharata, Dattilam of Dattila, Brihad-Dēśī of Matanga, then Sangita Ratnakara written by Sharangadeva, Sangita Raj by Rana Kumbha, then Caturdandi Prakashika by Venkatamaki, and so on. For the list of works, you can go into the e-text, where we have given the list of works along with the names of authors and the period of their composition. We have several references and all details about the music which was prevalent in the respective periods from these musicological works, and references to musicological concepts in sacred and secular literature, like we see Brihadaranya Purana, Vishnu Dharmottara Purana and many other Puranas and other literature, Kalidasa's works and other literary works in other Indian languages which give references to music ragas, the talas or the compositions or the playing methods and other related aspects. Let us now see in detail the archaeological and the historical records like the sculptures, paintings, inscriptions, manuscripts, copper plates and many such other things which are really helpful to know about the history of music during that period. Coming to the sculptures, this you are looking at a few pictures. They are the sculptures found in the temples at Belur and Halbed in Karnataka. We see that there are references to playing of instruments, dancing and other related things in the earlier and ancient sculptures. This is another sculpture where you can see how the instrument is held and how it is, the bow is, how it is actually played and how the musicians and the other troupe members are there depicted. We see several other depictions in such other sculptures. This is another sculpture where a team of musicians you can see along with the dancers, each one depicted as being playing and accompanying various several music instruments and also the dance. The entire troupe is seen here. We have several such kind of sculptures in the temples on music and dance throughout India, particularly in the southern part. This is regarding the paintings, the Ragamala paintings or the depiction of a raga in a form of a painting. We have many other paintings which gives the paintings of the musicians, a music troupe or a dance troupe, and here you can also see how the Rag Bhairav or the Ragini Madhumadevi are being picturized. These pictures and paintings are also very helpful to know about the history of music. Coins which were available in a very ancient times, they are also very helpful to know about the history of music. And here you can see a coin of Samudragupta playing a harp or a lute kind of thing, and this has been depicted in a coin of his period. Inscriptions are very important sources to know the history of music. What we see now is a copper plate inscription available in Tirumala and Tirupati. These contain the compositions of Annamaya. We also have an important music inscription is at Kudumiyanmalai in Pudukkottai district, which gives the notations of music, the swaras of the 7th century. There is also another inscription at Tirumala which gives an incomplete inscription of course, but it gives details of the notations of a Suladi which is supposed to have been composed by Annamaya. These are all very helpful to retrieve the music of that period. Manuscripts are again valuable evidences to know about the history of music. You can see there is a palm leaf manuscript on this, and palm leaf manuscripts and paper manuscripts are available. They contain references to music, the actual text on music, the songs, the literary sources and other literature on music. We get it from the palm leaf and the paper manuscripts. Here is a manuscript where you can get the songs. They are written either in Grantha script or in Telugu script or in any like the Kannada or many other scripts of the period and the place where it is deposited. Other sources that are helpful for us to know about the history of music are the official records that have been written during different periods and preserved in the gazettes in the form of official notifications and other related materials. The travelers' notes written by foreign travelers and others who have come and just made a survey about the cultural history and the musical history of the particular place. We also have references from the letters or diaries being written and exchanged between great musicians, the kings and his Asthana Vidwans or the court musicians, whatever records that are available in the form of the messages given to them. We also have a lot of anecdotes relating to the miracles and such other happenings. And the prominent and many important to all of these are the musical compositions themselves, which again contain a lot of references indirectly to the history and the tradition of Indian music. So until now, I hope you have got a broad idea about how and what are the different sources to know about the history of music, what all had happened in the beginning and how we have been. Now we are able to just recollect and see what had been written and what are the different sources, and from those sources how are we able to retrieve the history of music. The history, not only speaking of history, also takes into account the history and that development. We have seen it through three parallel traditions, like the written tradition, the oral tradition, and the archaeological and the historical records that were helpful to us. And I hope when put together, all these evidences will definitely give us an idea of the history of Indian music from a very long period ago and till today, and we come to know about the greatness of Indian music and its role in bringing out the great culture and tradition of India. Thank you.